Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr. It's a leap off on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day, listening to us, especially if you're an everydayer. We appreciate you guys being part of the show and making us your first listen every day. We are available on all platforms. You can catch us on Apple Podcasts, where you can leave a 5-star review for us, Spotify, Pocket Casts, Get Casts. That's one I think I found on when I was doing the research on where we get listened to. And of course on YouTube, where you can join the live show and join folks like Ted, who's never this early, but Ted's with us tonight. Hurricane, Senny's in here. Freddie, Joel Vicente, and Big Honey hanging out with us. Lots of folks with us here on a Sunday night. This will be your usual recording time for World's Finest during our off-season run. Programming note, Adam will be with you for a solo show on Wednesdays, and I'm going to be bringing back guest week. Will turn into guest Fridays. I'll be having a guest on every week during the off-season, leading into when we get ramped back up closer to training camp. I want to let you know that today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network. His name is Adam Mares. He's director of content for DNVR. Check it out, everything over at thednvr.com. Pre and post game shows for every Nuggets game. Lots of Nuggets content daily. Are you without Jokic are you still going to be doing the pre and post game for Serbia?
We didn't do pre and post game last year. We did do post game actually. We did do shows, but we were in Serbia. That's part of why. But no, I don't think so. I mean, we'll see. I got to see how the ramp up is. I got to see what the excitement is. Maybe it'll be for Jamal this year since Jamal's playing.
Yeah,
and Manila, so the timing is going to be, I think, pretty off. I don't know what the time exchange is, but I imagine it's going to be pretty wonky.
Do you want to plan for next Sunday for us to talk about Team Canada? Let's just go ahead and plan on that. We'll build a segment next Sunday for Team Canada.
They have an exhibition game on the 9th, so they play here in about a week and a half. So next week, middle of next week, we'll probably have some kind of Jamal Murray tape to talk about, which will be exciting.
Hey, he added something. All right. So on today's show, we are going to talk. Today's show is going to be built around. We started this concept last show where we talked about Peyton Watson versus Zeke Naji. We're going to continue that today, and we're going to talk about Jamal Murray versus MPJ. And obviously, there's a little bit of a difference here in that these two aren't necessarily competing for minutes, but it is kind of an interesting idea Adam kind of proposed of who's going to have the bigger leap. What does a leap look like for both of these guys? And first, we're going to talk about Jamal Murray in this first segment. Second segment, we'll talk about MPJ. And then we'll have a debate on who we think is going to have the bigger leap next season. And it should be a pretty good one. Obviously, both of them coming off phenomenal seasons helps when you win a championship. Jamal kind of showing that he put himself back on the map, right back where he was coming out of the bubble. And even honestly in a higher place, because despite his very reasonable and understandable reticence to validate any of the bubble stuff, there was kind of the idea of like, okay, but let's see you do it not in Orlando in that specific environment. And then he did it, and he was amazing, and he was incredible. MPJ, I think, on the other hand, he turned a lot of people around. I think Tony Jones is kind of emblematic of this, in that there was this idea that, well, look, MPJ is always going to be a liability for you. And he wasn't. He outright wasn't. He was actually really good defensively and played great, I thought, during the entire playoff run right up until the finals, where he hit an uncharacteristic cold streak from three, but in general, still thought he contributed both in game 1 and game 5 with meaningful plays. So obviously both coming off of a huge season. We'll start here, Adam. Jamal has never made an all-star team. Jamal has never made all NBA. Jamal was very much kind of considered an afterthought again, coming into I think the season built around Nikola's 2 MVPs. What does a leap for Jamal look like next season?
To me, a leap is playing closer to what his playoff level has been, but for a regular season. So number one, that would be consistency. Jamal has not been a very consistent player in the regular season in his career, although he has been a very consistent playoff player, including this last year where I thought he was even more consistent in the bubble than he was in the bubble. but it would be being a more consistent player, and then it would be playing at the level that he played up in the playoffs, which to me, he only averaged 20 points per game last year. He shot well. He was an efficient player. But I think that next year, if he was playing at a playoff level, scaled down for regular season intensity, minutes, all of those things, I still think that's probably 24 points a game. Wouldn't you say, Matt? If you adjusted those things for minutes and intensity, 24, 25 is about what you would say the caliber of player he was in the playoffs. That's what a regular season version would be.
Yeah, I think 25 is the number. Particularly, I'll say this, that with his, he is not a high usage player. And I think that that's notable as we kind of talk about this, where he did have a 26% usage rate this season, but a lot of point guards rack up way, way higher. I think Jamal obviously could have a lot higher if he wanted to, or if the team wanted him to have a higher kind of mark. But he also averaged 6.2 assists this season. And we had that stretch really towards the end of the season where he was rattling off, 9 consistently over and over again. We talked about kind of his evolution. He carried that through in the playoffs. That I think is maybe going to be key to how we kind of talk about this. But from a pure bump standpoint, it probably is getting to 25 points. But I guess my question for you would be, to get from 20 to 25, is the key for him to get even more efficient or for him to take more shots? Because it's going to obviously have to be one or the other, unless we're counting lowering turnovers and converting those into free throws.
I just think it's both. I think it's a small increase in field goal attempts with a small increase in efficiency. And by the way, man, I'm looking at it right now at his splits last year. The highest he averaged in any month was 22.1. That came in January. He averaged 25 in February, but it was just 6 games. So I think that's too small of a sample size-ish. But it goes to show that even if you combine January and February, he didn't average 25. And we're saying he will for an entire season. So I still think it's kind of unlikely that he makes that big of a leap. But yeah, you just look at what he did in the playoffs. He was so comfortable operating in the pick and roll. He was so aggressive. And if you want to use my biggest talking point, he was so conditioned. He was in such good shape that he could sort of attack and play at that level of intensity for the entire time. So to me, it's those things.
Here's a comp from a statistical standpoint in terms of level of production. Jalen Brunson. So Brunson averaged 24 and 6.2, then the same number of assists that Jamal did. Shot 49% from the field, 42% from 3. So about 3 percentage points better, or 2 percentage points better than Jamal did, and 82.9, roughly the same thing that Jamal did from 3-point range. Now, Brunson, obviously, again, he had 27.2 usage rate. Not significantly higher than Jamal, but higher. And every percentage point between 25 and 30 matters quite a bit. But that to me is maybe kind of a good representation of kind of a goal level, because I think everyone would kind of say that Jalen Brunson probably had a better regular season than Jamal. And I absolutely think that Jamal can be as good or better than Jalen Brunson. And so that to me is maybe the comp of what a leap looks like, where, and a lot of this is going to depend on, as we've talked about a lot, is he's going to have to get more comfortable and better in the non-Jokic minutes.
This is exactly where I was going to go. Yep.
And that's going to have to be, I think, where the bump comes from, is his ability to control the game, to produce efficiently, and to be able to navigate, run a team when he's not just hammering 2-man game with Nikola. This
is the real spot where he makes a leap. We thought last year there were moments, and I think the way it played out, perhaps we see why, but there were moments when he shared the court with Bones Highland, where I felt like he just ran to the corner and got out of the way and did not involve himself. Even in the catch and shoot or secondary playmaker, it almost just felt like he said, "You take it. I'm just going to be out here for moral support." This next year to me really represents, if they're going to go with the Murray stagger, and I just think Malone wants to, if they're going to go with the Murray stagger, he has to captain that lineup. We keep talking, Matt, about the bench unit. Christian, Peyton, Zeke, and we keep wondering, what is their identity? What is their identity? In most teams, that wouldn't be a question. If it was Devin Booker and those guys, you'd be like, oh, their identity is Devin Booker. He's going to carry them in the half court, or Donovan Mitchell or any of these other guys. Murray is talented enough to be able to do that, but we almost write off that it might happen. He has to go and say, all right, that's my unit. Christian, here's what you do. Here's what you do. Here's how everybody operates, and I'm going to carry us whenever things get bogged down. To me, that's what making a leap is.
Yeah, you know what's funny is like I'm looking at Book's numbers from last season, regular season. 28 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, 5.5 assists. So a little bit less than Jamal there. 49% from the field, but just 35% from three. Did have some injuries in there. He only played 53 games. He missed a big chunk of time starting with that Nuggets game on Christmas. 55% effective field goal percentage. A lot of that though, like his usage rate was still obviously going to be high because he's like the marquee player on that team, but he was also sharing like he was at 32 last year, which is really high. He was honestly sharing the ball though with like Chris Paul and then later with Kevin Durant. Like I'm expecting Devin's numbers to go way up this season, but honestly when you kind of look at his performance last year, the numbers differential was largely just a usage differential between him and Jamal, right? Because Jamal was an overall, more efficient player in part because he plays next to Nikola. But I think you're right though, is Jamal needs, and this is I think a challenge for him. I would imagine it would be a challenge for a player. He works very hard to build an identity with the starting unit as a starting player next to Nikola on this team. And it's phenomenal. And they've made one of the best two-man duos in NBA history. Like they will be talked about as that kind of combo when all is said and done. But I do think it's an interesting question of, can Jamal shift? Can he go from the role that he plays with the starters and then find another identity where he's an even bigger focal point with less help, doesn't have the kind of help of Nikola that he provides, and still be able to be as effective and efficient as he needs to be in order to lift both those numbers and the team overall?
I just think he needs to take the next step. It's a big part of his step. I keep comparing him to Kobe. Kobe and Shaq, yoke the Shaq. That's the next step is, hey, now you have to carve out what the identity is without Jokic, because that's a lot of your minutes. I mean, I don't know what it is, 30% of his minutes probably without Jokic. So I would love for him to start to develop an identity. And if he does, he'll be an all-star. The Nuggets will be a 1 seed because what's our big question mark, Matt? The bench. If he solves it, then guess what? I think that it's going to be pretty smooth sailing in the regular season. So he'll be an all-star. The Nuggets will be a 1 seed. And I just think he'll level up as a player in a way that'll suit him and suit the Nuggets.
Sean says, my comp for Murray's career is increasingly Tony Parker plus. That's actually a really smart comp there, Sean. I think it's especially with the way that they play. Tony Parker, go back and watch the 2007 and 2013 finals and watch Tony Parker, and you will see some absolute wizardry from that French dude. On the other side, we'll talk about Michael Porter Jr. What does a leap look like for him next season? A year removed from the injury issues, a full off season to improve. What does MPJ's leap look like if he has one next season? We'll tackle that on the other side. Right now, I want to tell you about FanDuel Sportsbook. Take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting everything from the money line to the over-under to who you think is going to have the first home run, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. I put some MVP bets in this season for some long shots because I only bet long shots now. It's a new thing that I've decided on in the off season. I also am betting some 1-2 finishes in football, and I will tell you that I'm betting Chiefs 1, Broncos 2. I think they are going to be the second best team in the division this season. I think they're going to be better than the Chargers. So we're in alignment on Broncos over Chargers this season because Justin Herbert continues to be very overrated. There's no better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making this part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us on a Monday. Hope you guys had a great weekend. We're talking about Jamal Murray and MPJ, and now we're going to dive into MPJ and what this looks like for him for a leap next season. Last season, MPJ played 62 games. He averaged 17.4 points, 5.5 rebounds, 1 assist per game, 0.5 blocks. He actually averaged 1.1 stocks per game, which is pretty good. 49% from the field, 41% from three, 80% from the line for a 602 effective field goal percentage. All great numbers there. The rebounding, obviously, at 5.5. He had some games where he was incredible in that. I am really curious to hear what you think a leap for MPJ looks like next year?
Well, first of all, athleticism. I mean, it was very clear that he, like Murray, was coming back from injury and got more healthy as the year went on. So number one is if he just looks springy, dunks on people. He dunked on Kevin Durant. Perhaps the best poster Kevin Durant has ever been on the receiving end comes at the expense of Michael Porter Jr. in the playoffs. So him coming back just more athletic, I think, would make a meaningful impact on him. We saw his rookie season that he got to the rim, even off of the dribble, not with great footwork, but just because he's so long and so athletic, and we haven't really seen that since. So number one, it would be his athleticism. And then number two, Matt, he actually shot the worst three-point percentage of his career last year, 41.5%, which is really good. Kind of shows that his floor for three-point shooting is really high. But I still think it's in him to shoot 43, 44%. I know that sounds like a small amount, but that 43, 44% is like S tier all time. Yeah. And I just think that it's entirely possible that he's more athletic and his three-point shooting is actually takes a bounce up.
I think it's definitely possible. I think a leap for him, like a meaningful leap for him, I think is going to necessitate. Honestly, the leap for him, I think, is more dependent on the coaching staff than it is on him. He needs to get better at his handle. That's still going to be an issue. It's always going to be a problem with him. Is like can he get from point A to point B through multiple defenders without losing the ball? And a lot of that is like, it's also body control. Because if you notice, like he had some plays where he would drive and he would pick up some charges. And so like, that's another area. But to me, that's also connected to the handle, where if he's got better control, then he'll be able to navigate around those defenders to be able, because he can finish, I think, with a number of ways, given his athleticism and wingspan. He's got the little floater that I think he can get to a little bit more effectively. But a lot of this is simply the coaching staff hammered into him, sacrifice. We need you to do these things. We need you to do these things. We need you to do these things. And he did them, and he proved that. If they're going to go forward, MPJ's leap is as important to the Nuggets as it is to MPJ. And I'm not entirely sure from an organizational or coaching staff perspective if that sentiment is shared. Like, I don't believe that there is kind of like we need MPJ to like go to another level. You're going to need that because the amount of you start making these runs into June and there is a cumulative effect. And Nicola's been doing an incredible amount of lifting for 4 full years. And he is no longer 25. He's no longer 23. He is no longer those 8. Like you do this for 4 years and you turn 29 and it gets a little harder. It gets a little bit more exhausting. It's actually one of the reasons why, if you look historically, guys over 29 don't win MVP. Like a lot of people are surprised by that. It's absolutely true. It's one of the things that like Brandon Anderson over at Action Network and on our podcast Buckets has taught me is like, no. If you look back historically, it's very rare to see guys that are 30 plus win MVPs. And one of the reasons is they save themselves for the playoffs. And Nikola has been an absolute iron horse. He has been a train these years, but he's human. And I think you kind of saw that in like his reflection after the season of like, I'm going to need some extra time. And the mental strain, I think, is as much. But to get back to MPJ, that's why MPJ needs to be able to take stuff forward. And he needs to be able to like, they need to give him opportunities in on the nail, in face-up positions in the post. They need to give him opportunities coming off screens in catch-and-go situations. They need to run more actions for him. But even less so than actions to get him a shot is they need to let him be an initiator. Because so much of what happens is, well, yeah, he's really effective as a means of the offense, but you can guard that. Like, there are ways that you can build defense of that into the scouting unit, which is one of the reasons why MPJ doesn't get more looks, is because his shots are in that scouting report as don't allow this action. So they need to be able to get a bigger variety, diversity, and a little bit more trust in him to initiate and create offense. And that's going to have to be a partnership both between MPJ for not constantly settling for the wild step back stuff, to have more in the bag there.
I mean, he makes them though, but you're right. He does need more in the bag. But yeah, it's not a problem. It's not like not like when he takes those, I'm like, oh, I bet you he shoots an efficient amount on those.
Yeah, I get that. Like having the tough shot maker is a big part of like his equation, but it's also, I think that the problem is when there are times, it felt like last year there were times when honestly he didn't want to take that shot, but that's where the only thing he could get to. And his ability to have more options, I think, is key for what he's able to get to, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think for sure getting a few more ISO touches for him would be good. That's what you're talking about when you're saying elbow touches or nail touches. They used to run an action that they actually changed to running more for Aaron Gordon last year, but that would get him sort of on the left wing and let him kind of just do his Carmelo impression and ISO and pull up from the mid-range, which I just think is, again, if you talk about taking a load off of Jokic, those plays add up. Like they matter. This was what Kyrie used to do for LeBron. LeBron would run the team offense, and every now and then he'd say, hey, I need a couple possessions off. You do your thing, and I'm just going to stand at the top of the key and drag defense out. It's smart basketball, especially over the course of a season. But I think the thing that would really, to me, indicate a leap in the ways that you're talking about, integrating him into the offense, is the dribble handoff game where he goes into a quick shot. I think if you just move the scale for him on what is an acceptable three-point shot a little bit more in the Klay Thompson direction. Klay Thompson takes bad shots. He takes some wild, like, handoff, I'm barely open, but I'm going for it. And I think more importantly, allowing him a little bit more of a green light there so that teams are panicked about that option, because I think it opens up other things. But then also getting him, like, I saw people in the chat talking about he doesn't average any assists, is less than one assist per game. He's not like Murray or Jokic, who need to be able to make assists and reads all over the court. But I do think you can get 2 or 3 areas and say, here's one spot where you're always going to have an option for the pass. And the handoff right into the shooting motion is going to draw a defense out. And with how he elevates and how he hangs in the air for the little drop-off pass to Jokic, where now Jokic is attacking a 4-on-3. To me, that is the action that I think Denver should add to the plate. It's like a pin down. You come off of the handoff. You go right into your shooting motion, whether you're open or not, and you decide on the way up whether or not you're open. If you are, let it fly. If you're not, they jump out at you. Drop it right off to Jokic, who should be an easy release valve.
I think you can also run some of that with the bench unit if he plays alongside Jamal. You can actually run that with Jamal as the handoff option, because then if they try and switch it, then you've got a smaller defender trying to close on him, and he's able to get such clearance over those smaller defenders to be able to shoot effectively. So I feel like you could do more there. I feel like MPJ and Jamal got a lot better this season, but there's still, I think, like a lot of runway. That's my word for the offseason is runway. There's a lot of runway there for Jamal and MPJ to take off together and make each other better, which I think would be good. I did like this comment. Go ahead.
Do you think there's any chance, like we keep thinking of, or at least I do, of one starter staggering with 4 bench players? And I think that one player is Jamal Murray. Do you see, like, what are the odds it's not Murray or it's not just Murray and Malone changes his rotation to where it's actually way more blending than we've seen in the past?
I think that there's a good chance of that, just because I think that there will be a little bit part of there's a two-way street. I think that happened here a little bit, because I don't necessarily think that the team, because they're not as, for whatever reason, they don't feel the same way that you and I do. I think about some of the Jokic minutes, which is like you could put a cardboard box out there, and it's going to have a plus minus a 7. I think that there was a kind of sense of because this is a thing I get from a lot of coaches when I've talked to them through the years, is like you want to have these minutes where you have like a great, like the best players on the floor together, and you want to maximize those. And I think that that this year Christian's, I think, ascension will help a lot with, hey, we can get some more minutes for Christian next to Nikola. And if Christian plays, especially the 3 guard in some situations, or the three spot, the forward, small forward, then you can maybe stagger MPJ or Aaron and switch that up. I think I'm open to the possibility. I don't necessarily think that Malone is as attached to hockey lineups as people seem to think he is. I think it's a product of how he viewed the roster and less a matter of this is what he wants to do. So that's kind of my thought process. I like this comment from Buzzer Beater, which is he kind of put the stats out there: 2.0 assists, 7.0 rebounds, and 42% three-point percentage should be what MPJ is aiming for. I think those are all I think that's a pretty reasonable line. Like getting up to 7 rebounds is tough, it's a rebound and a half a game when you play with one of the most dominant rebounding players of all time. But I do think that it's like a good bar for him to kind of set for himself. Like if he's and there are ways where he makes a leap next season where he is like he goes the other way. Like I've kind of talked about him being more diversified and what he can do. Maybe he goes the other way, right? Maybe it's just like he becomes the ultra role player. Maybe he becomes like a combination of Rashard Lewis and Michael Redd. And it's just like this incredible, super role player is the way that he was with the Magic. It's entirely possible. But I do think that there's more to his game that he can make because he is that talented and he is that athletic as far as like what his makeup looks like. We get on MPJ?
Good.
All right. On the other side, we'll talk about which one we think is going to happen or which one's more likely to happen or which one happens more. We'll debate MPJ versus Jamal's leap on the other side when we return on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making this part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us on a Sunday night or a Monday if you're listening. Appreciate you guys doing that. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts, take a second. Go to the podcast page and give us a 5-star review. Those are huge. And we get these emails every week of all the teams that are in those charts. And I want us to get on there. So help us out and send the show to a friend because who wouldn't enjoy the dulcet tones of Adam Maras throughout the week? All right. So it's time, buddy. We've talked about Jamal Murray's leap. We've talked about MPJ's leap. Which one do you think is more likely to occur?
I think it's easily, in my opinion, Jamal Murray. And I'm a big Michael Porter believer. I'm a believer in Michael Porter's skill set and the fact that he has more to offer. I'm not a huge believer in big threes all getting to show everything that they have. Jokic isn't going to diminish his game meaningfully. Even if you think he's going to reduce his points, he's still going to be the fulcrum of the offense. It just might manifest itself in more assists and fewer shots. And Murray, I don't think, is going to take a meaningful step back in what he does. I think he's going to take a step up. So I think Michael Porter, as much as he has more to offer, I just think he's probably going to stay more or less in his box, step outside of that box a little bit this year, a little bit more, but probably less than fans want.
I think it's a really interesting question. And I think I tend to agree with you that I think it's going to be Jamal. But I will say that for all of the validation that Jamal provided his staunchest defenders that might be named Ryan Blackburn, that there's a reason that Jamal was not talked about the way that he is now.
Of course.
And his last burst then led into a non-existent offseason and then immediately into a season. So it wasn't fair, really. Like that's part of the thing is like, hey, he started off slow that next season, even after the bubble. Yeah, because they had like a month off, right? And then he gets hurt and then he misses the next year. And then he comes into camp this year and he's still recovering from the injury. So we haven't seen him in this spot, not ever. We've never seen him have this type of playoff run and then an off season to recover. And then this, but at the same time, guess what? He had all of July off and now he's back into camp with Team Canada. So like, there's a little bit of, this isn't necessarily all that dissimilar. He is going from a championship celebration in early June to the end of July reporting for training camp with Team Canada. And for whatever reason, he has never come out of the gates firing. He has never come out of the gates in dominant fashion. And on some level, I can't define why. I can't explain what the variable is that creates that situation. But when something happens this repeatedly, it is a pattern enough for me to at least have like a little bit of like a hint of skepticism of like, I have no questions about Jamal in the playoffs. Like I know what he like, right. I feel like I know what he's going to be. Yeah. He's going to be like, this guy that's like dropping 30 points a game on 50, 40, 90 in a series. Like he had all-time performances in these playoffs in almost every round. but the regular season is its own animal. It's its own deal. It is entirely different. It's less of a problem solving exercise, and it's more of just like it's a slog. It's a mental balance. It's a physical conditioning, and it's a marathon. All these types of things. And so for me, I kind of wonder if MPJ could have the leap just based off of there may be like he can just shoot 46% from 3 for 4 months, and I wouldn't bat an eye. And that's going to meaningfully impact your numbers. If he commits himself to grabbing one more board a game, even if it's just like stealing it from Nikola, and he shoots 44% from 3 for 4 months, that's going to meaningfully impact what a leap looks like for him.
I like this comment from Hurricane, who he says, I think they're related. To me, the big leap is Maul and Mike gaining chemistry. I don't know if I think that's true. I would probably bet against it, but it would be the best story. It would be great if two things happened. One, Malone did blend the lineups more, because I'm kind of curious to see Jokic with some of the bench guys, including Peyton and Christian Brown. So I wouldn't mind seeing a little bit more of these staggerish lineups. But if that was a storyline, that those two guys, that you have a Murray and MPJ chemistry that emerges in this like two-man game or two-headed attack, a la Booker and KD, like could they become something similar to that, where that becomes the identity of that unit? To me, that would be awesome. And you even think about it, Matt. Murray, Christian, Peyton, Porter, Zeke is an interesting combination. You've got three great defenders in Christian. Well, Peyton, we think is a great defender. I'm unsure yet. And Zeke, that's three very switchy, good contained defenders. And then you have two great offensive players in Murray and MPJ. You've got athleticism. It's actually a super long lineup. It could be interesting. I don't know if they would go to it, but to me, that would be a really fun thing to happen next year that would make the regular season something different from what we've seen. Because you know this, you win a title, you've been together all this long, it can get a little stale. That would make it not stale.
55555-ish says Jamal MPJ two-man game while Jokic is sitting would be awesome to see. Yeah, like I don't know exactly what an MPJ Jamal two-man game looks like, but it would be there's ways to do it, and it would be I think it would benefit both players. And
it probably looks more like two guys attacking and just kicking to each other. Like it's probably not a pick and roll or something of this or that. But this is what Booker and KD had.
Yeah.
You would attack, draw on the defense, kick, they attack, and eventually the defense is too far behind.
Yeah, and a lot of it with MPJ, with KD and Book, was they had really good actions on Armani Williams, allowing for coming off pin downs, where one would have the ball and deliver it to the other one clean, and the defense would have to kind of stay home because they'd have to be able to bring a double if Book or KD drove. So it was always making the defense second guess, and that opened up those opportunities for the other guy to come off screens, pop, and get open. And they're hoping to obviously do a little bit more of that with Bradley Beal this year. Okay, let's go wrap it up for Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us, making this part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us on a Monday. Adam will be back with you on a solo show Tuesday night or Wednesday. And I'll be with you on Thursday night or Friday with a solo show with a guest. Until then, make sure to hit the 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts, hit the like and subscribe button on YouTube. Have yourselves a great week. We'll see you guys again next time on Locked On Nuggets.